Hello and welcome along to another episode of My Football Story from the Honest Football Podcast. This week, Charlie speaks to Delano Sam-Yorke about his brilliant career in the professional game. Having started his youth career at Wycombe before making a breakthrough at Woking, we talked to Delano about his route from non-league to Football League, as he played at Basingstoke where he had a successful and fruitful spell in front of goal, before joining Cambridge United. We discuss his infamous Delano Day in the playoff semi-final at Cambridge United, before stints at Lincoln City, Forest Green, Woking again and Maidstone United. Delano's very honest about his career and talks to us in a lot of detail about the mindset of a striker. Delano's also still playing in non-league now, which has been halted slightly by the pandemic, but he talks to us about his plans for the immediate and the longer term future and whether he'd like to stay in football after his career. So we can't thank him enough for joining us. If you did enjoy the episode, please do put a thumbs up on it. Subscribe down below for regular content from the Honest Football Podcast. But this is Delano Sam-Yorke's football story, and we hope you enjoy it.
And I'm delighted to say that Delano joins us now. It's actually a beautiful Monday afternoon, so I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to talk to us, Delano. So thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
So, I mean, you had a really interesting career, especially as a striker. One of the few strikers we've actually been able to nail down for an interview. So, first of all, thank you for that. But what we like to do, though, before we talk about your career and all of the goals and all that sort of thing, is we always go back to the very, very beginning. So, just talk us through your first ever memory of football, whether it was like playing out in the garden, going to a game. You know, what was your first ever memory of the beautiful game, really?
My first ever memory was obviously like Little League when I was maybe 6, 7. I used to play for a team called Tigers. It's like a Sunday league, yeah. We used to wear like orange and black stripes. Just remember, obviously, my dad used to take that team. He used to coach the team. Yeah, so I think we trained once during the week and obviously a game on Sunday mornings. So obviously he used to run me down there, take me, coach the team, bring the little oranges at halftime and everything. But yeah, that was my first real memories of football.
Yeah. Do you remember the first game you ever went to, like a proper football ground, sort of professional game?
It was Chelsea. My dad used to take me to Chelsea. Yeah, he had a season ticket, so he took me every week, every home game. Yeah, my dad used to take me to Chelsea, Stamford Bridge.
Would that have been the 90s, sort of like Vialli, Hullet, all that sort of era?
Yeah, just literally after that.
Right.
So after the Hullet, Vialli, yeah.
Yeah, it's a cracking time. I mean, I'll be honest, big fan of 90s football anyway, like the kits and all of that. Do you know what I mean? I think we're roughly the same age.
Baggy kits.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. The thing is you get pulled back quite often if you're trying to get away from something, wouldn't you? So it was a bit easier than probably
exactly.
Nowadays. But you obviously mentioned about playing like Little League football and all of that sort of thing. But you obviously went on to play professionally at a really, really high level. So at school, were you like much better than everyone else, or was it a bit more of a slower sort of thing?
I don't think I was. I don't think I was better than like all the rest. There was some good players in my school. Like obviously lunchtime and obviously the school teams and stuff. I never really used to shine like that. All the other players used to be better than me. So I think I was just the one that kind of stuck at it. Everyone just kind of went on their own paths and I was just really stuck at it.
It's an amazing thing, like you say, actually. I suppose it's something we don't necessarily always think about as fans from the other side. Like you say, that determination, that drive you need to get where you've been. Do you know what I mean? As well as having the talent, obviously, like I say, some of it is as much as that. But you obviously made a career as a goal scorer. But when you were a kid, did you play as an attacker or were you?
I was a winger. Yeah, I was a winger, but I was so fast. I was so fast. They put me up front. But yeah, I was actually a winger.
Just sort of talking through that, because, as far as my research goes, you sort of started your serious, for the want of a better phrase, football career at Wycombe. How did that take us on that sort of journey from, like you say, being at school to then ending up at Wycombe? How did that happen?
I forgot how that happened, actually. All I remember is my dad told me that he was going to take me to Wycombe one evening for a training session. I don't know. I actually don't know how it came about, but he said, I'm going to take you to Wycombe. But obviously, I live in London, so Wycombe's quite far from here. So I think after school, he would pick me up and then take me there, obviously train, and then bring me back. But I think I did it maybe 3-4 times, and then they signed me. I was only there for a season, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember roughly how old you were at that point? Like what sort of...
I was 13.
Right.
I was 13, turning 14, yeah. But I think that year, the whole team got released.
Oh, right.
Except maybe one player. or something like that. Yeah.
I do remember at that sort of point, I think there was a few academies who were starting to run a bit low on sort of, in terms of finances or that sort of thing.
I see.
I live in Luton, and it happened similar around here actually. Like they had to bin half the academy, regardless of talent. Do you know what I mean? It was just sort of financial reasons, wasn't it? But so you had it. So you obviously, like you mentioned, you're at Wycombe, but then eventually you end up at Woking, and we'll sort of talk about the first team sort of football in a bit. But you sort of come through from there. So how did that sort of work? And was it partly because it was a bit closer to you as well in that sense?
After I got released from Wycombe, I just started playing Sunday football again. Sunday, Saturday football. A team called Collier's Wood at the time. And I think I went Kingstonians prior to that. But yeah, I was just literally, I wasn't really taking it seriously or anything like that. I just wanted to play. I like playing football. So I just wanted to play at any team, whatever. I think at the time I was maybe 15, what was it, 15, 16? 16. I heard about the trials at Woking.
Right.
So obviously that's when I put myself forward, went to the trial, I got in. And yeah, the rest is history, really.
so in terms of that, the sort of thing of going to like Woking and that kind of thing, and obviously being a bit more serious in that sense, what did you notice a difference in terms of once you eventually sort of made your way towards the first team? What's the difference then when you go from that sort of football to then, like you say, playing sort of first team football, even training with them, let alone sort of playing?
Yeah, it's a big step up. It's quite intimidating actually, because obviously you've been around like boys and everything like that, and then you literally go into a men's changing room. Like it's a bit intimidating, but at that time there was a lot of characters at Woking, so obviously everyone was quite funny, quite laid back and stuff like that. So it was cool. It was all right. It was easy to get into.
Was that full-time football by that point, or were they?
Yeah, that time was full-time. Yeah. So I think the season before I signed, I would train maybe once a week with them.
Right.
So like the academy manager, Graham Baker, would put obviously the good players forward, and maybe I'll train with them once a week or whatever. So it was a slow transition, and obviously getting into it and just building myself into it. But it was all right. It was cool. It was all good. Yeah.
How did you find that, if you don't mind me asking, going from like training once a week to something like 4 or 5 days a week? In terms of on your is it quite hard? Because obviously people from the outside go, train 2 or 3 hours a day. It's obviously not as easy as that, as you'll probably testify. But do you know what I mean? Is it quite tough to make that adjustment?
No, like I said, I love playing football. So whenever I could, I would obviously go to the parks or whatever. Just every day I would go and play football.
Right.
And obviously training now professionally, it was easy. I loved it. I was playing football every day at a good standard as well. So and I was like, when you play with like grown men and you see how they play, you get better. Do you know what I mean? When you train with them and you see their standards, obviously you set your standards a bit higher. So therefore, I felt like I was getting better training with them.
Yeah, of course. No, it makes a lot of sense, actually. I think it's fascinating to hear, like you say, that sort of love of the game, really, and not being bothered about having to, because sometimes, and I won't name them, even some pros you've spoken to, sometimes it feels a bit arduous for them to go train every day. But like you say, I suppose you live in the dream, really, in that sense, aren't you? But,
no, don't get me wrong. The older I got, the older I got, every day training is a bit. It takes its toll. It takes its toll
on your body.
Yeah, on your body. Yeah.
I just want to fast forward to your debut now, Delano, in that sense. So before the actual game, in terms of that sort of, you've come through all of that, and like you say, you've sort of just been playing for these sort of local teams, and now you're going to make it your professional debut. What was your mindset before that? And the reason I sort of wanted to ask you is because you're a striker, you always get the impression that strikers need to really back themselves, be confident, that kind of thing. But it's a professional debut at the end of the day. Can you remember what that emotion was like for you before the game?
I remember. It was actually the season before I actually signed for Woking. I made my debut.
Oh, okay.
The last game of the season against Kidderminster at home. Obviously, I would train with the first team here and there, but there was like little rumours like, oh, you're going to be on the bench, like on the weekend or whatever. I'd be like, don't be silly. Yeah, you're going to be on the bench. So I actually got the call maybe during the week saying, oh, obviously you're in the squad for Saturday. Obviously bring your stuff. I was like, oh, okay. So obviously I didn't think I was going to play. I just thought I might get a little chance on the bench or whatever. Yeah, obviously the build up. See, my family came to the game. Obviously just in the changing room and stuff like that with the players. It was quite intimidating because obviously it's my first time playing in front of a big crowd, So obviously you warm up, you hear all the screaming, the cheers. Yeah, it was crazy. It was a good day though. It was a good day.
I was going to say, sort of, in terms of that, even when you establish yourself a bit more the following season in that sense, even like playing in front of all of those people and stuff like that, like how much of a sort of difference does that make from where you've been, like you say, and it's probably the only thing I can relate to in terms of playing, local football as a kid, 10, 12 people there, suddenly have hundreds. Can you block out the noise? Can you sort of,
You can block it out. You can block it out. I blocked it out, yeah. Like, obviously, the first 5 minutes or whatever you're on the pitch, you hear it. But then, obviously, while the game's going on, you just block it out. It's like you're playing normally like, without no fans, I
just wanted to ask about that season. It's a slight negative sort of thing in terms of Woking, the actual club. You had a lot of turnover of managers at that sort of time. The player, in particular striker, how hard is it to establish yourself? Because I suppose, any level of football, I suppose a new manager's got his own ideas and that kind of thing. And
you have to keep proving yourself and again. But the season I signed, we had Kim Grant came in.
Yeah.
And then he got sacked after maybe 2 months, 3 months. Right. And then the assistant took over, Phil Gilchrist at the time. But then he got sacked towards maybe the end of the season. And then the academy manager took over. So he kind of knew me, so it was all right. But I was injured for like most of that season. I had shin splints. So I weren't really involved in anything like that.
Well, I was going to ask you about that. As I say, like, obviously, I've never played professional football, never been near it. But the only thing I can relate to with you is injuries. I suppose anyone who plays any standard of football can relate to is injuries in that sense. But as a professional, how much harder is that? Because I suppose, do you have to like train on your own a bit and, that kind of thing? And how do you work through that in that sense?
It's hard because obviously when the team go out to training and you're stuck in the physio room doing work, like you have to come in earlier. You have to come in before everyone else to obviously get your treatment and stuff like that. And then when they go out to train, you have to do a bit, whether it's in the gym or a separate part of the pitch. Like if you're jogging and like little drills or whatever, after you're there getting more treatment. So when they leave, you're still there. So it's quite long. Obviously, if you have like another injured player or two, 3 injured players all together, it's okay. But when you're on your own by yourself, it's hard. It's hard.
Yeah, I was going to say that sort of thing. I suppose it's especially like you say, from the way you sort of described as well, like that love of playing football every day and then not being able to do that, and especially if it's your sort of job and your livelihood, I suppose.
And then you always think, because at the time, obviously the contract I was signing was like 1 year.
Yeah.
So you're thinking, I haven't really played that much. Am I going to sign for the next year? Are they going to have me back or whatever? So things like that just start getting into your head, but it is hard.
I was going to just touch on that a bit later on, but I might as well talk about it now in terms of, we've spoken to some players, who've also been in that situation of, 1 year contracts and that kind of thing. When do you start looking at elsewhere? I mean, I know that, because I think it's unfair. Sometimes I've spoken to some lads and it looks like they've got a long CV, but actually when you dig down and you speak to them and actually find out stories behind it, it's, I think we're very quick from the outside as fans to go, blah, blah, he's only been at all these clubs, it must be an issue with him, whatever. And it's obviously not true, but when you're on those 1 year deals, how hard is it to sort of almost establish yourself? And then when do you start looking and thinking, actually, maybe I'm not going to get another year here, so I need to look elsewhere? How does that sort of work across the season?
Well, at that time, I was young, so I don't really know what I was getting into. I didn't have an agent or nothing like that. So for me, it was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Do you get what I'm saying? I didn't know what I was going to do. But obviously a lot of the players, like you start hearing a lot of players like just talking about what they're going to do or like this and that is interested. I might go there. So for me, I was just kind of playing it by ear, really. I didn't really know what to expect. I didn't really know where I was going and stuff like that. So
I was going to say, in terms of that, back to your sort of your career in that sense, I think that then come about, obviously, Wycombe got relegated, sadly, but, following the end of the next season and being in and around the playoffs, you then got to move to Wimbledon. So just sort of, how did that come about? And was that your sort of choice or, what's the sort of thing behind that?
I actually wanted to stay. I wanted to prove myself because that season didn't play as much as I wanted to. I was always in and out. Yeah, so that season, we stayed up in the Conference South. We stayed up. And obviously, I wanted to go again and obviously try and stamp my mark. But obviously, the manager at the time, he was just basically saying, look, obviously, you're not really going to be like the starting guy, the main guy. So look, you can leave if you want. He basically said, step down. You should go a league lower.
Right.
And obviously play as much as you can. But in my head, I'm thinking, but I know I'm good enough to play at this level. So why am I really stepping down kind of thing? So that was that. And I think a few of my friends were at Wimbledon at the time.
Right.
And it was local to me because I live in Wimbledon. So for me, it was local. Yeah. But I initially started training with the reserves because it was local. So I thought, let me just train there and obviously sort out my situation another time. So obviously pre-season started. I got invited to play in the first team game for Wimbledon.
Right.
Obviously the manager at the time was Terry Brown.
Yeah.
I think he took a bit of a liking to me. So they invited me to training with the first team. Yeah, all three, like there was three of us. We got signed that season as well for the first team. So for me, I didn't really go to be in the first team. It just kind of happened that way. It was a strange one.
In terms of that, then obviously, you know, especially a club like Wimbledon are on the up and that kind of thing. How do you sort of look back on that period? Because obviously, I suppose, like you say, you maybe didn't want to leave Woking. If you don't mind asking a slightly personal question, do you regret going there or not in that sense?
No, I don't regret. Obviously, I met some good people there, friends I'm still friends with today with.
Yeah, of course.
And that was one of the best changing rooms I've been in.
Really?
Wimbledon. Yeah, just in terms of joking wise, it was just banter all the time. Yeah. Like obviously the young boys had their dressing room and the older lot had their dressing room. So it was all the young boys just kind of mixed and we all got along. And yeah, it was a good time there. It was fine. I was just training basically. Obviously I weren't playing, so I was just training. Yeah.
But then I suppose that did, I suppose in a longer term sort of thing, it did work out because obviously we'll get on to the sort of next few steps in your career in a sec. But, you know, you end up going to Basingstoke in that sense. And was it initially on loan, I believe? And then...
initially it was on loan, yeah.
So I wanted to ask you, just because, you know, we spoke to some players, not all have been out on loan. How much choice do you have over a loan move? Or was it literally like the club saying, right, you need to go here, that kind of thing?
I had a choice because the season I left Woking, obviously I played against Basingstoke a couple of times.
Yeah.
So the next season, they actually wanted to sign me, but that's when I was going to Wimbledon to train.
Right.
So I was actually going to sign for Basingstoke.
Right.
But I thought, let me let them wait because Basingstoke was far at the time.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
So I thought, let me just go and train with Wimbledon. And then towards, I don't know, maybe 2-3 weeks before the season starts, I'll sign there.
Yeah.
But it ended up signing for Wimbledon. So Basingstoke were always on the phone, like how you getting on, how you doing. Obviously, they knew I weren't playing at Wimbledon, so they said, "Look, just come down for a month, get some game time, get fit, get your love back for football, kind of thing."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Yeah, cool, why not?" So yeah, that's how it actually happened.
You ended up being top goal scorer, didn't you? In that sort of the season, I think after that when you went then permanent.
Yeah.
Did you want to move there permanently in that sense? Once you've done that sort of loan experience with them.
So obviously, I wanted to stay full time, but obviously it doesn't really work like that. Obviously, if you don't have offers or nothing like that to go to a full time club, maybe sometimes it's best to go to a club that actually want you and you know that you're going to play. So you can obviously build yourself back up again. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what it was like. But I wanted to sign there.
Just in terms of, and honestly, I'm not after financial in anything like that or anything, you know, but when you go from full-time to part-time football or anything, you know, obviously what else are you doing as well as playing football? Because I suppose, you know, you're suddenly training maybe 2-3 nights a week as opposed to, you know, I know, as I say, I'm not after any personal information, but what else do you sort of do in that sense?
The money was actually better in part-time.
Oh, right. Okay, there you go then.
Yeah, the money was better. I remember when they offered me the deal because I was actually going to sign to another club. And the money was roughly the same, but I thought the other club had more potential to obviously go up. So I was going to sign there. Obviously, I told the Basingstoke manager, I'm going to, thanks for having me. I'm going to sign to the other club.
Yeah.
And as I put the phone down and gone to call the other club, he's called me back. The Basingstoke manager called me back. He was like, look, the chairman don't want to let you go. I don't want you to go. How about this? And obviously the offer, you put the offer on the table. I was like, whoa. It was a no-brainer.
Of course. But you repaid them back, as I say, you know, that season for you on a personal level, being top goal scorer, all that, you know, were quite a good, you know, very good season for you in that sense. But that then led to, you know, a move then to sort of Cambridge. So just sort of talk us through that point then, because I suppose, like you say, you've maybe had a really good season at Basingstoke and, you know, you've had all of this sort of time. I imagine Cambridge would have been back at full-time football, you know, at that point as well. So just sort of talk us through that decision. Was it a hard one to leave Basingstoke?
No, it wasn't that hard. Obviously, I enjoyed my time there. It was a lovely club. I got really close with a lot of the fans and the workers there and stuff like that. But obviously, I knew if I wanted to obviously push on, I need to leave. I actually had an agent at that time now.
Right.
So obviously I was doing well, and a lot of agents were just kind of coming to me and saying, "Oh, I'll get you this, I'll get you that." Like, you know how they are.
Yeah.
And I actually signed to one of them, and that's when the Cambridge interest started showing. Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of that, like, and as I say, no sort of personal stuff, but we're one of the, you know, it's just interesting to hear the other side of like a professional career. In terms of agents, like when you talk about a decision, if you've got an offer of a few, and you don't have to give personal details, but what do you sort of look for when you're choosing one? Because
that's the thing. Yeah, I didn't know at the time.
Right, got you.
I didn't know, so I didn't really know what I was looking for. I didn't know what to expect because this is my first time kind of dealing with an agent.
Yeah.
So for me, the person that probably talked the talk was the one I signed to. Yeah.
It's an easy thing to do, though, isn't it?
Yeah, you know, some people have a good way of talking.
Yeah, of course.
Like really good, and they're very persuasive.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like they can change someone's mind just like that. So yeah, I was the one that got sucked into.
No. I genuinely really appreciate being so honest about that, because it's just that agent, whoever they were, got you that move to Cambridge. But you know, there's obviously a point later on the end of the season we'll talk about in a bit. But actually, if I got my research right, you actually scored against Halifax twice in your debut as well, which is sort of a bit of irony, really, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? But I just wanted to talk to you about that. A very quick side note, in terms of, you know, when you're having a really good game as a centre forward or a striker, whatever you want to call it, you know, and you're sort of banging in goals like that, 2 or 3 in a game, etc. You always hear this sort of cliche, don't you? Like, he's a natural striker, he's a natural goal scorer, and you probably had that said about yourself. But actually, how much, if in your opinion, is natural, and how much is that is coached? And it's just fascinating to hear it from your perspective, if that makes sense.
I don't think I've ever been a prolific goal scorer,
right?
Except for that, obviously, that 1, maybe 2 seasons at Basingstoke. Yeah. I've never really been like the natural goal scorer. I've always had to like do extra work,
right,
to score goals. Like I'll be the one that's doing all the donkey work, and setting other people up, or I would never be the one to really get tap-ins or nothing like that. Like I think that's a natural goal scorer. People that are in the right place at the right time just to finish off the goal. Do you get what I'm saying? Like I used to look at some players and they just used to score goals. They didn't really used to do much in a game, but they used to score goals.
Right.
And I'll look at the goals they're scoring. They're just there. Do you get what I'm saying? They're just there.
Absolutely.
They're just there, the right place at the right time. That's a natural goal scorer.
It's sort of fascinating to hear that, like you say, that because you do hear it a lot on the commentary or media, etc. You know, he's a natural sort of striker. But actually, it's quite reaffirming to hear that that's probably true. But we spoke about that season at Cambridge, which will culminate a bit in a minute with the game against Halifax. But you had a short loan at sort of Lincoln, but you were also injured, weren't you, towards the end of the season? So despite obviously the amazing end we'll go on about in a second for you on a personal level, how was that season for you actually at Cambridge in that sense?
It was frustrating. It was. I liked it. I enjoyed it because it was so structured. Everything to a T. Like come in, do stretching together, urine test before training, swimming after training. Like everything was just so structured, and because they were really going for it that year. The frustrating part was, obviously, I was in and out again.
Yeah, of course.
I was in and out. The manager always kind of preferred the other strikers to me. So for me, it was just frustrating.
It'd be remiss of me not to talk to you about that Delano Day, as it's famously known about, you know, while you're here. But just before we sort of talk about that, you probably get asked so many of the same questions about this sort of that game and that. So I'll try and put a different spin on it a little bit. But I know actually leading up to the game, you were injured, weren't you? So, you know, talk us sort of through the bit of, you know, were you expecting to play? Because obviously I think you're out for a few weeks, aren't you, at least beforehand?
Yeah. So the whole lead up, like you said, I was injured for maybe 4 weeks. Maybe 4 or 5 weeks maybe. I had a calf strain.
Right.
And I thought my season was finished because obviously we lost the first leg of the playoffs. So I thought, like my leg weren't right. I thought this is it. So I was just literally with the physio every day, just training on myself basically, while everyone's just kind of building up to the game. So
in terms of actually, you know, talk about when you get to the actual game, obviously, I suppose, was it a surprise you, maybe, if you don't want me saying this and not putting words in your mouth, but was it a surprise you in the matchday squad, let alone starting the game in that sense? Do you know what I mean?
Of course. I thought, I didn't think I was going to be starting at all. I didn't think I was going to make the bench. I actually trained the day before the game for the first time, like 5 weeks or 4 weeks, however long it was. I didn't think I was going to be involved.
No, so it's amazing then that you go from that to then essentially single-handedly winning the match. Do you know what I mean? In that sense, but. I just wanted to ask you on a different sort of note, really. When you particularly like take your second goal in that game, for example, and this is just an example in a game, but any game, when you are through on goal and, what goes through your head? I know it sounds silly, but if you've got like keeper coming out or the ball drops you in and around the box, do you know what I mean? Is it just like, I'm going to hit this as hard as I can? Or
I just kind of look at what the keeper's doing, because I've seen clips, and I don't know if you've seen the clips, but when I'm through, I look up, down, up, down, because I'm looking at the ball and looking what the keeper's doing.
Yeah.
So as I've seen him kind of lean to one side, that's when I slotted it the other side.
Because I just wanted to ask you on that really, really quickly, does that come with experience? Like, because obviously by that point you've played 7, 8, 9, 10 seasons nearly. Do you know what I mean? As a pro, would you think you'd have still reacted like that if you'd have been, say, an 18-year-old in that situation? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, probably, because I've always kind of been a side foot player. I don't like smashing the ball too hard. I'm always like, side footing. Yeah, it's crazy. You know, when I used to watch Henry, his side foot, when he goes through on goal and he just side foot into the corner. I used to love seeing him do that. So I used to try and do whatever he was doing.
Just stroked it in. But that led then to you playing at Wembley. So, on a personal level, an amazing sort of experience. But I just wanted to ask you, when you're then playing in front of like 20-odd thousand people, I know I mentioned to you earlier, even going from playing youth football to adult football, can you block out noise and all that? But it's a bit harder to do in such a vast stadium with a lot more people, if that makes sense.
It is. No, actually, no, I'm lying. It's not really, because obviously how it was set up, obviously there was one side with all the fans and the other side was empty. So they kind of put all the fans to one side. So if you were on the other side where the fans weren't, like, it's just like a normal game.
Well, it's interesting you say that. I was just going to ask, like, you mentioned about your debut and maybe it being a bit, not overwhelming, but, you know what I mean? You sort of, it can be, I suppose, a bit intimidating. I mean, you talk about when you were back at the very, very beginning of your career. Because you've got that experience of playing professional football, did you still get those sort of feelings because it's Wembley and it's a final or not?
I was actually nervous. I never get nervous before games. Never. Maybe a bit anxious, but I never get nervous. And I was nervous. Really? Like, even at the tunnel, in the tunnel, I remember I was like, I was proper nervous. I can't even lie. Yeah.
No, I appreciate that. It's fascinating to hear the sort of honesty of that, I suppose, in that sense. You obviously then, you won the game and everything that got on that season and FA Trophy wins and all that sort of thing. But, you sort of started the season in the Football League. Was then and I think you ended up at Lincoln at that point. Again, was that your sort of choice, or was it more in search of trying to just get football in that sense?
A bit of both. I knew he was the manager, I knew he weren't really gonna play me as much as I wanted to, just like the season before. Nothing really changed. Do you get what I'm saying? So
of course,
for me, it was like, I want to try League Two, but at the same time, I kind of just want to play, because from young, I've just wanted to play football. It's not even about like what club or whatever. I just want to play. Do you get what I'm saying? So
no, I completely get that. So but the thing was, you then had when you went to Lincoln, you know what I'm saying, it was a good, in terms of on a personal level, good sort of rate of goals and all that kind of thing. What sort of happened after that, in the sense of, there was quite a few short-term deals and that kind of thing? And I don't mean that in a negative way, but what I mean is by that point in your career, I suppose you're not wanting to maybe sort of be set on the bench or rotated round and that kind of thing. Is that fair to say that, or do you know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Because when I went on loan, initially, I think it was a 3-month loan deal. So at the time, the manager got sacked during my loan deal.
Right.
Yeah, he actually got sacked. So another manager came in, and I don't really know what was happening. I think he was just kind of trying new things and stuff like that. So it was a bit of a stop-start season as well. But he ended up signing me to the end of the season, because I think he had his own plans for the next season. So he just wanted to stick with what he got and then go again next year.
What else comes into a decision then, who you sign for, as well as the football part? Is there other bits you have to consider, like location of a club, that kind of thing? Do you know what I mean?
Obviously, at the time, I was still young. I just wanted to play, and I wasn't really about the money. It was always kind of decent from Basingstoke. It was fine for me. Like, you're always going to nick like extra, I don't know, £100 or £50 less. I'm not going to go after that, like, to get what I'm saying. So it wasn't really about the money for me. I just wanted to play.
One of those clubs I wanted to focus on that you had a really good time at, actually, was Maidstone.
So there was a time, I think it was after Forest Green. It might have been after Forest Green. I went back to Woking. and working weren't really happening for me. So it was a loan. It was a loan towards the end of the season.
Got you.
Maybe no, it was during the season, like halfway through. I stayed there for like 3 months. We signed like four players on loan. And obviously we did well. I was very inconsistent there. I didn't score enough goals. I was playing, so we played the 3 up top and I was playing on the wide right.
Okay.
So for me, it was a lot of defending.
Yeah.
Because obviously nowadays fullbacks just like to bomb on. So obviously I'm tracking the fullback quite a lot of the time. So by the time I'm further up the pitch, I'm tired. It's true. I'm not saying it's an excuse or anything, but it just didn't really work for me.
Just sort of brings up to speed then to sort of where you are now, because I know there was an announcement of retirement, and then but you then sort of signed for a couple of teams since then. So just sort of, I know there's obviously a global pandemic, so that's put a bit of a hole in it. But do you know what I mean? In terms of you as a footballer, like where are we now in that sense?
So at the time when I announced my retirement, I was obviously going through things like personal life and things like that, and I just wanted to be done with football. Of course, I was getting messed about at Dartford.
Right.
Because it was after Dartford, the Dartford
right.
season. Yeah. And I hated it there. It. I hated the management. It was just awful. I was just getting messed about a lot, and I just thought, nah, this ain't for me anymore. So that's obviously when I announced it. Yeah, but then obviously I just wanted to get back into it. Them times I was still 30. I was maybe like 30 years old. So I'm still wanted to just kind of find my passion back for it.
It's interesting you say that then, because obviously, in terms of the where you are now, I know that most recently you were at East Grinstead and that sort of, you've got plenty of time to still as a pro, and I'm sure you've still got the talent. Is there the ambition to go back up to sort of where you were? And if not, I don't want to put sort of I don't want to put you in a position, but if not, do you have any plans to stay in the game, or are you sort of, if once you put your boots up, that's it, you're finished in that sense?
I would like to, yeah. Obviously the coaching side I would like to get into, but I still feel young. I still feel good. So as soon as obviously this pandemic and they figure out what they're going to do with our league, because that's what it's come down to, because I think everything below Conference South got locked off. So obviously I wasn't able to play or anything like that. But as soon as they know what they're going to do, I'll go back.
We always have like a few quick fire questions. So if you just, we'll quickly whiz through them and then I'll let you crack on the rest of your day. So the first one is all about favourites, basically. So your favourite ever ground you've ever played at?
Wembley.
The next one, actually, it's something I'm sort of fascinated by, is like football boots. So what would be your favourite pair of boots that you've had across your career?
Night Vapors.
What
colour? Because Henri used to wear them. Yeah. Any colour Henri used to wear, I used to wear.
You just have the same ones. We sort of spoke about managers, so if it's going to put you in a position, don't feel like you have to answer. But if you had a favourite manager you've played under, who would that be?
Football-wise, Richard Money.
This one you've probably been asked loads, so I do apologise for it. The best ever player you've played with?
With Harry R.
The last one, Delano, so we originally started this series ages ago, just interviewing fans about their favourite ever game. So you can go for the obvious answer for you or not, it's up to you. But I'm going to ask you sort of two. So your favourite ever game that you've played in, but then your favourite ever game that you've watched. So you, like, just as a football fan, you might have been on the TV, you might have been at the ground. So what would be your two favourite games? One as a player and one as a football fan?
One as a player, it's got to be the playoff semi-final.
Yeah.
Game that I've watched, it's a Chelsea game. It's definitely a Chelsea game. You know when Zola, I think it was Norwich, when he did that flick from the corner?
Yeah, I think
I was there.
Were you? Oh, wow.
Yeah, I was there. Yeah,
he was some player, wasn't he? He was some player, like, unreal.
Yeah.
How good
I remember that because I was in the opposite corner.
Right.
And it was crazy. It's crazy. I remember that.
The technique on that is unreal, isn't it, to be fair? But Delano, it's been an absolute pleasure. Honestly, I can't thank you enough for giving up your time to talk to us.
You're welcome. Take care of yourself, yeah?